You're not broke because you earned too little. You're broke because your life got expensive before your system got strong. And if you don't fix that in your 30s, the pressure doesn't disappear later. It follows you, quietly, for decades. Your 30s don't arrive with a warning. They don't knock. They don't ask if you're ready. They just show up one day and quietly put everything on the table at the same time. One moment, you're telling yourself you're finally doing okay. You have a decent salary now. You're more adult than you were a few years ago. And then, almost overnight, the math stops making sense. Housing feels impossible. Childcare costs more than you expected. Retirement suddenly isn't an abstract idea anymore. Your parents are getting older. Your job expects more. And somehow, with all of this, you're still supposed to feel grateful and stable. But instead, your money feels like it's being pulled in 10 different directions. Not because you're reckless. Not because you're bad with money, but because this decade is designed to stretch you. Your 20s were about figuring things out. Your 30s are when you realize that the consequences of not having figured things out have started to arrive. And no one really prepares you for that moment. No one tells you that adulthood doesn't usually feel like confidence. It feels like pressure. Quiet, constant pressure. If you've ever looked at your bank account and thought, I make more than I used to, so why do I feel more anxious? You're not broken. You're not behind. You're standing in the most financially demanding season of life without a system to support you. Welcome to Quietly Broke. This channel exists for people who look fine on the outside but feel stretched thin on the inside. People who are tired of pretending everything is under control while silently worrying about the future. Because the truth is, the decisions you make in your 30s don't just affect the next few years. They quietly shape how much freedom, stress, and choice you'll have for decades. And here's the uncomfortable part. This story doesn't resolve in the middle. It only makes sense at the end. If you want content that helps you understand money without shame, without hype, and without losing your sanity, take a second to subscribe to the channel. It genuinely helps us keep making videos like this. Before we continue, let me ask you something. Answer honestly in the comments. A. You feel behind financially, but you believe it's still fixable. B. You feel behind financially, and you're not sure it is anymore. Comment A or B below. If part 1 was about recognizing the pressure you're under, then this is the moment where you stop absorbing that pressure and start creating space. Because before you can talk about growth, investing, or long-term freedom, there's a quieter, more uncomfortable truth you have to face. Nothing meaningful can be built on a foundation that's constantly being pulled backward. In your 30s, the greatest threat to your financial stability isn't that you don't earn enough. It's that too much of what you earn is already spoken for. Consumer debt is the clearest example of this. Credit cards, car payments, personal loans, lingering student debt. None of these feel dramatic on their own. You're paying them, you're keeping up. On the surface, everything looks fine, but what debt really does is invisible. It quietly converts future opportunity into past obligation. Every monthly payment is money that no longer belongs to the version of you who's trying to move forward. The danger isn't just the interest rate. It's the rigidity. Debt hardens your financial life. It removes your ability to adapt at the exact stage when life becomes less predictable. Careers shift. Families need help. Health issues appear without warning. When a large portion of your income is locked into payments, even small disruptions feel overwhelming. You're not overwhelmed because you're weak. You're overwhelmed because your margin is gone. That same lack of margin shows up through your credit score. Whether you pay attention to it or not, credit isn't a reward system. It's a pricing system. It quietly determines how much extra you'll pay for the same house, the same car, the same insurance, the same life. A small drop in your score doesn't feel dramatic in the moment. But over decades, it becomes one of the most expensive mistakes people make without realizing it. What makes credit so unforgiving is how little grace it offers. One missed payment, one period of disorganization, can undo years of good behavior. Maintaining excellent credit isn't about optimization or tricks. It's about boring reliability, paying everything on time, keeping balances low, letting time work instead of fighting it. This isn't flashy, but it's powerful. It's one of the few advantages available to almost anyone who takes it seriously. And then there's the emergency fund, the most misunderstood piece of personal finance. People talk about emergency savings as if it's just a buffer for bad luck. In reality, it's a buffer for fear. When you don't have cash reserves, every problem becomes emotional. Every unexpected expense feels personal. Every decision feels rushed. A real emergency fund changes that. It gives you pause. It buys you time. It allows you to respond thoughtfully instead of reacting under stress. In your 30s, emergencies are rarely small. They involve other people, children, parents, homes, jobs. That's why a meaningful emergency fund isn't about 3 months because someone once said so. It's about having enough that your life doesn't immediately destabilize when something breaks. You're not building this foundation to feel rich. You're building it so your life stops feeling fragile. Because once debt no longer dictates your choices, once your credit stops quietly taxing your future, and once you have real cash reserves behind you, something subtle but profound happens. Your money stops controlling you. And for the first time, you can start deciding what you wanted to do next. When the ground finally feels steady beneath you, the question quietly shifts from how to survive to how to move forward with intention. This is where most people in their 30s get stuck, even with decent incomes and good habits. Not because they don't care about the future, but because they're making decisions in isolation. A little here for retirement, a little there for savings, a reaction every time something new pops up. Without realizing it, they're playing financial whack-a-mole. Always busy, never truly progressing. What changes everything is learning to think in decades instead of paychecks. In this stage of life, money stops being a series of transactions and starts becoming a system. Housing, taxes, retirement, insurance, family responsibilities, long-term goals, none of these exist on their own anymore. Every choice pulls on something else. Without a plan that connects those pieces, even smart people end up feeling scattered and behind. A real financial plan in your 30s doesn't need to be complicated. But it does need to be intentional. You should know where your money is going, what it's meant to accomplish, and how today's decisions shape future outcomes. Budgeting becomes less about restriction and more about clarity. Retirement planning becomes less about checking a box and more about direction. This is also the decade when compound interest either starts working for you or quietly works against you. A helpful benchmark is aiming to have roughly 3 times your annual income saved for retirement by age 40. Not because the number itself defines success, but because it creates momentum. Once you reach a certain mass, growth accelerates. Before that point, everything feels slow and frustrating. Time is the asset you're protecting here. Every year of delay doesn't just reduce future wealth, it permanently removes growth you can never reclaim. The math doesn't announce itself loudly. It simply compounds in the background, rewarding consistency and punishing hesitation. At the same time, your 30s are when lifestyle inflation becomes the most dangerous. As income rises, expectations rise with it. Better housing feels deserved, convenience feels necessary. Spending expands quietly until higher earnings deliver the same stress as before. From the outside, it looks like progress. From the inside, it feels like running in place. The solution isn't discipline through deprivation. It's structure through automation. When your income increases, directing a portion of that increase toward long-term goals before it ever reaches your lifestyle changes the outcome completely. You adapt to what remains, not what could have been spent. This one shift protects your future without making your present miserable. You don't need to optimize every decision or predict every outcome. You need a system that makes the right behavior easy and the wrong behavior harder. Because no matter how much you earn, money without structure will always leak away. And once your finances stop reacting to life and start following a plan, progress stops feeling accidental. It becomes intentional, measurable, and sustainable, which is exactly what this decade demands. And once your money has structure and direction, the next realization arrives quietly but firmly. Not all financial risks are financial on the surface. Some of the most expensive mistakes people make in their 30s don't come from bad investments or poor budgeting. They come from ignoring the human side of money, the parts that don't feel urgent until they suddenly are. Estate planning is a perfect example. Most people avoid it because it feels premature or uncomfortable. It's easy to tell yourself it's something you'll deal with later, when life is calmer or when you're older. But estate planning isn't about expecting the worst. It's about acknowledging reality. Accidents happen, illness happens, life doesn't wait until you feel ready. If you have children, shared assets, or people who depend on you, the absence of basic planning means decisions about your life could be made by courts and paperwork instead of by you. Who makes medical decisions if you can't? Who cares for your children if something happens? What happens to your home? Your accounts? Your responsibilities? Having simple documents in place isn't morbid. It's one of the most responsible, loving things you can do for the people who rely on you. Health is another area people rarely think of as a financial strategy. Yet it may be the most important asset you have. Your ability to earn, focus, and enjoy life depends on it. Healthcare costs are one of the largest expenses over a lifetime, and many of them are influenced by habits built in your 30s. This is the decade where neglect turns into patterns and patterns turn into consequences. Investing in your health isn't about chasing perfection. It's about sustainability, movement you can maintain, food that supports energy instead of draining it, sleep that allows you to function, stress management before stress starts managing you. The return on these choices isn't just fewer medical bills. It's fewer missed opportunities, fewer compromised decisions, and more years where your income potential stays intact. If children are part of your life plan, education costs deserve early attention as well. College has become one of the fastest growing expenses families face, and waiting until the last moment compresses years of financial pressure into a short window. Planning early doesn't mean fully funding everything. It means giving time the chance to work on your behalf. Even small, consistent contributions create options. They reduce future stress. They allow flexibility if plans change. And they prevent education costs from competing directly with retirement or basic stability later on. What connects all of this is a simple truth. Money exists to support life, not the other way around. When you ignore the human side of your financial decisions, you don't eliminate risk, you defer it. And deferred risk has a habit of showing up all at once. Protecting your health, your family, and your future self isn't separate from financial planning. It is financial planning, just at a deeper level. And when you step back and look at everything together, a different truth begins to emerge. The point was never just to manage money better. The real destination is financial confidence. Not the kind that comes from hitting a specific net worth number or watching an account balance go up. But the kind that settles into your nervous system. The kind that lets you make decisions without panic. The kind that keeps you from waking up at 3 in the morning, replaying worst-case scenarios you can't turn off. Financial confidence is knowing where you stand. It's understanding your trade-offs and accepting them without shame. It's being able to look at market swings, unexpected expenses, or life changes and say, this is uncomfortable, but it's not catastrophic. That calm doesn't come from optimism. It comes from preparation. When your money has structure, when risk is accounted for, when your future isn't built on fragile assumptions, fear loses its grip. You stop reacting emotionally and start responding intentionally. Decisions become clearer because they're grounded in reality, not hope or denial. This is why the goal of your 30s isn't perfection. It's resilience. You're building a system that can absorb shocks without breaking. A life where one bad month doesn't undo years of progress. A future where options exist because you created margin early enough for it to matter. If you feel behind right now, you're not alone. Most people do. The difference between those who stay stuck and those who eventually feel at peace isn't intelligence, discipline, or income. It's whether they start replacing chaos with structure while time is still on their side. You don't need to fix everything at once. In fact, trying to do that is often what leads to burnout and abandonment. Progress in this decade comes from choosing 1 or 2 changes that meaningfully reduce stress, and then sticking with them long enough for momentum to build. Small actions compound, systems compound, confidence compounds. Your 30s are powerful not because they're easy, but because they're early enough. Early enough to course correct. Early enough to let consistency do the heavy lifting. Early enough to ensure that the next chapters of your life are shaped by choice, not constant worry. You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to build something solid enough to carry you forward. When you zoom out and look at everything we've talked about, a quiet pattern becomes clear. Your 30s aren't hard because you're doing something wrong. They're hard because this is the first decade where money stops being theoretical and starts being consequential. Every choice now echoes. Every delay compounds. Every system you build, or fail to build, quietly shapes the emotional quality of your future. What most people miss is that financial stress isn't really about money. It's about fragility. It's about living in a state where one surprise can knock everything off balance. And the opposite of that isn't wealth. It's stability, structure, and margin. The deeper lesson here is this. Financial freedom doesn't begin with more income. It begins with fewer points of failure. When you remove unnecessary debt, protect your credit, build real reserves, think in decades, guard your health, and plan for the people who depend on you, you're not just managing money. You're designing a life that can absorb pressure without breaking. So how do you apply this right now? You don't overhaul everything. You choose one area where stress is loudest and bring order there first. One account, one habit, one decision that gives you more breathing room than you had yesterday. Then you stay consistent long enough for confidence to replace anxiety. That's how progress actually happens, quietly, steadily, without drama. Now I'd love to hear from you. What do you think matters more right now in your life? A. Building financial stability. B. Increasing income. Please leave A or B in the comments so everyone can see different perspectives. And if this kind of grounded, honest conversation about money resonates with you, consider subscribing to Quietly Broke. Your support helps us keep creating content that actually helps people move forward.